إذا أهلا بكم جميعا أعزائنا الحضور. دائرة الصحة العامة ترحب بكم ويسعدنا ويشرفنا استضافة الدكتورة نور الخطيب على وقتك وعلى تلبية الدعوة إن أنت تيجي تشرفينا وتجاوبي على أسئلة الحضور. وأهلا بيكي، أهلا بيكي معانا.
أهلا فيكي هايدي، شكرا كتير لك.
طيب، دكتورة نور أخصائية طوارئ، أخصائية قسم الطوارئ، ويعني مع الوباء ومع السنة ونص اللي احنا مرينا بيها ما كانش فيه حد تعبان قد الناس اللي في قسم الطوارئ. الضغط كان عليهم كبير جدا وما يزال. فطبعا احنا بنقدر ان انت تقدري تدينا بعض الوقت ان احنا نتحدث مع حضرتك النهارده ونسالك الاسئله اللي احنا نحب ان احنا نسمعها. اول شيء نحب ان انت تدينا صوره ايه اللي بيحصل في قسم الطوارئ، ايه اللي بيحصل من وجهه نظركم انتوا كطاقم طبي. ازاي يعني اليوم بتاعكم بيمر ازاي؟ ايه اللي انتوا بتشوفوه من الناحيه الثانيه؟ احنا بنيجي كمرضى بنشوف حاجات وبنقيم الموضوع بشكل، انتوا ادونا النظرة من الناحية الثانية. اتفضل.
إن شاء الله. شكرا كتير لك للدعوة، وأنا بسرني إنه أحكي مع جمهورنا عن كيف الإمرجنسي ديبارتمنت، القسم الطوارئ بالمستشفى. هلا رح أحكيكم عن قسم الطوارئ بالمستشفى عامة، كيف هو in general، بس كمان رح أعطيكم صورة عن كيف هو هلا مع الكوفيد. فخلينا نبلش من in general. فخلينا نقول إنه الواحد عنده مرض، عنده مشكلة وبده يروح يشوف دكتور. هلا احنا بالبلاد العربيه بتذكر انه شو ما يصير معه الواحد انا رايحه على المستشفى. هلا هذا الشيء ما المفروض يكون هيك بكندا او حتى بامريكا، لانه عندنا بروجرامات، عندنا فاميلي دكتورز، عندنا urgent care clinics، عندنا كثير اشياء غير الطوارئ نقدر نشوفها اذا ما عندنا حاله خطيره او حاله صعبه. بس خلينا نقول إذا الواحد عنده، خلينا نقول عندنا مريض، خلينا نسميه أحمد، بعيد الشر عن أي أحمد هون، بس خلينا نقول إنه عندنا مريض اسمه أحمد عمره 55 سنة وعنده وجع بالقلب. عنده وجع بالقلب وهو يعني بدخن، خلينا نقول، فخايف على قلبه. المكان اللي لازم يروح عليه هو الطوارئ، مش الفاميلي دكتور ولا الأورجنت كير كلينيك. أوكي، فهلا أحمد قرر إنه وجع قلبه مش قوي، فرح يروح على الطوارئ. فحيروح على الطوارئ هو، يعني حيخلي حدا يوديه لهناك، انه حيخلي حدا يسوق. اوكي، وقرر انه ما يتصل ب 911 وراح بالطوارئ وحدا ساب. اول شيء بيصير انه لازم احمد يروح عند الترياج نيرس. ترياج نيرس اللي هي الممرضه اللي بتساله اول كم سؤال، اللي هو شو جايبك اليوم؟ هل عندك حرارة؟ هل أنت سافرت على أي بلد؟ شو عندك مشاكل طبية؟ بتسأله كل هاي الأسئلة. أوكي، هاي الترياج نيرس، وبتقيم هل هو يعني ليفل 1 2 3 4 أو 5. معناتها إنه لازم الدكتور هلا يشوفك، أو لازم يشوفك يعني مش يعني إذا حدا بغرفة تانية حالته أصعب، أنت يمكن تكون ليفل 2 أو ليفل 3. اوكي، وخاصه اذا الواحد عنده وجع قلب، الممرضه رح تدخله تعمل له اي سي جي، اللي هي المونيتور، اللي هي بتراقب القلب، بتراقب كيف دقات القلب. فبس نعمل الاي سي جي والممرضه تفرجينا اياها كدكاتره، نقول لها اوكي ما في شيء هلا حاليا خطير، بس هذا المريض لازم نشوفه يعني ممكن خلال ساعه او هيك شيء. اوكي، بس حسب الحالات اللي بتيجي. فانت بتخلص من الترياج نيرس اللي هي بتسالك كل هاي الاسئله، وبعدين بتنطر بالويتنج روم مع باقي المرضى لحد ما يصير الواحد دوره. هلا احنا دائما بنسمع ليش هالقد، يعني ليش لهلا ما شفت دكتور؟ صار لي 3 ساعات هون بعدني ما شفت دكتور، 4 ساعات هون بعدني ما شفت دكتور. هلا حاليا مع الكوفيد عم نشوف 5 6 7 8 10 ساعات ناس ناطره. اوكي، قبل بنشوف مثلا ساعتين 3 هيك شيء. اوكي، بس ليش انت عم تنطر؟ احنا جوا مش قاعدين على ايدينا وقاعدين عم نلعب او شيء، عم نشوف حالات مثل مرضى حوادث، أطفال ما عم تقدر تتنفس، ناس حاليا عم بتموت، فلازم ندير بالنا عليها أول وبعدين نشوف الناس اللي قاعدين. يعني بنقول if you're waiting it means you're doing okay. If you're waiting it means you're not dying. It's a good thing that you're waiting. I know it doesn't feel like a good thing. الواحد بيكون عايف حياته ناطر، بس بنفس الوقت بيكون في حالات أصعب جوا عم ندير بالنا عليها قبل حالته للواحد. حتى مرات قبل ما الواحد يشوف الدكتور يمكن نطلب بلاد تيست قبل ما نشوف الدكتور، خاصة إذا الواحد عنده وجع قلب بدنا نعمل بلاد تيست لنتأكد إذا في بالدم أشياء بتدل على إنه في مشاكل بالقلب. أوكي، فما الواحد إنه يستغرب إذا عم بعمل فحص دم وبعدني ما شفت الدكتور، هذا طبيعي. مرات ممكن نطلب من النرسات تعمل فحص دم قبل ما الواحد يشوف الدكتور.
بس أحب قبل ما حضرتك تكملي تتنقلي النقطة الثانية، لأن يعني الجمهور معانا النهاردة شبه نص نص عربي إنجليزي. معلش لو هتعبك لو تقدري تلخصي لنا اللي قلتيه ده تاني بالإنجليزي.
مش مشكلة. ممكن مثلا نسألهم إذا الكل بيحكي إنجليزي ممكن أحكي بالإنجليزي، لأنه واضح إنه مش الكل بيحكي عربي، فإذا الكل بيحكي إنجليزي أو يفهم إنجليزي يخبرنا. وطبعا اذا في شيء معين مش فاهمينه بالانجليزي بحكيه بالعربي، بس اذا الانجليزي تبعكم يعني ممكن تفهموا علي خليني اكمل بالانجليزي عشان ما نضيع لكم وقتكم بالاثنين اذا انتم بتفهموا انجليزي.
But is everyone okay with English, or some people here also require Arabic? You may raise your hand or put something in the Q&A if you require Arabic. لو انت محتاج لغة عربية ما تقدرش تفهم الانجليزي خالص، ارفع ايدك الفيرتشوال، الايد اللي في الزوم، او ان انت تحطها في الQ&A، عشان لو الكل اوكي مع الانجليزي هنخلي الحوار يكون بالانجليزي.
وبعدين حتى اذا في شيء معين مش فاهمينه بالانجليزي مش مشكله بنحكيه بالعربي، بس اذا اجمالا تفهموا انجليزي خليني احكي بالانجليزي اسهل لي كمان. Okay, everyone. So what I was trying to say is I was trying to give you an example of a patient coming to the emergency department. I called him Ahmed. He's 55 years old. He's a smoker and he's got chest pain. So this patient decided that he's going to get driven to the hospital. He's got someone who's going to take him to the hospital. The first thing that happens is Ahmed has to go to the triage room. The triage room is where what triage is priorities. So they check priorities. For example, if someone comes in for a small cut on the finger that needs to be sewed up, but it's not drop everything and come sew me up, doctor, right? If someone has that might wait longer than someone who has severe chest pain and is unable to breathe, right? So this guy, Ahmed, 55 years old, smoker, he's coming to see the triage nurse who's gonna ask him a bunch of questions and set the priority level and do an ECG for him. An ECG is that heart monitor that you see with the squiggly lines. That is what an ECG is. It tells me as a doctor if your heart attack is a severe major one that's happening right now, okay? So he sees the triage nurse asks a bunch of questions, and after that, she'll do the ECG, and then you might be waiting in the waiting room. There's a possibility that you'll do blood work before you go wait in the waiting room, or sometimes you do the blood work later, okay? So don't be surprised if you end up doing blood work before you even see a doctor, okay? That happens sometimes. So you end up waiting in the waiting room, and you know what? Before COVID, the wait times were much better. Now with COVID, the wait times are horrendous. So I would suggest that if there's anything that you think can wait, not the chest pain with this in a 55-year-old smoker, but in general, if there's something that you think can wait a day, can wait to see an urgent care clinic or a family doctor, then please go see them, especially right now. Right now with Omicron, your highest risk of getting Omicron will be in the hospital. Actually, nowadays, in the last 2 years, I am the most scared now than I ever was, only because I know that if I'm just wearing a mask and seeing patients, and if they have Omicron and just the beginning of it where they barely have symptoms, I can easily get COVID. Okay, so I would say stay away from the emergency departments unless you absolutely need it. Okay, for example, the guy in my example, needed the emergency department because he had severe chest pain. He's a known smoker, so he's got risk factors to get a heart attack, okay? But he's going to wait for the doctor to be available. And when we say the doctor to be available, we're not saying that the doctor is just sitting there and just twiddling their thumbs. No, we're literally seeing trauma cases that are coming in, kids that are unable to breathe. We sometimes have patients that are in the process of dying and we have to be there by their side. So all these will take priority to someone who is talking, breathing, and sitting and waiting. And we often say, if you're waiting, that means you're not dying. That's a good thing. I know it doesn't sound like a good thing because you're waiting, but trust me, it's a good thing compared to what we're seeing inside. Now, sometimes you're brought inside and you're waiting, you might be hearing all sorts of things happen outside. And I oftentimes, I have patients that come out of the door and look at me and go, "Doc, what happened? Like, you disappeared." I'm like, "Yes, because I have someone on that side that came in, just got hit by a truck, a 45-year-old guy who just got hit by a truck and might lose his life. So of course, I have to leave my talking, breathing, sitting patient and go see the priority, which is the car accident that had just happened." So the emergency department is just that. It's for emergencies. So if someone, for example, has had a red toe that is painful for the last few months, the emergency department is not the right place, okay? The urgent care clinic is the right place. Your family doctor is the right place. And I often hear patients tell me, "Yeah, but my family doctor, I haven't been able to get an appointment." That may be true, but don't forget, there's urgent care clinics all over the city, okay? You might be waiting in the emergency department for 5-6 hours if you've got a red toe that's been there for months, because of the priorities that we're seeing first, okay? So I would try urgent care clinics all over the city. And even in addition to that, during COVID, we've got urgent care clinics that are online. So I actually work in a couple of them, and there's so many things I can do online. We just open the webcam, the patient shows me their toe. I ask them to press on it. "Oh, does it hurt there? Oh, okay. I have an idea what it is. I can treat them. I can send the scripts to the pharmacy." So there's a lot of things that can be done online. And if you do just a very quick Google, you will find, I would say, over 150 online doctors that are available to you right now, okay? I know in my urgent care clinic, the virtual care clinic that I work for, patients wait maybe 5 minutes to see a doctor, maybe 5 minutes. And you know what? Even if they're waiting 7 hours, they're at home waiting for they get an alert on their phone when the doctor's available. So keep that in mind. Emergency rooms are for emergencies. What we are seeing is because people can't seem to see their family doctor, they're coming to the emergency room for something that's been going on for years. That is not the right place. You will not get the appropriate care. You will not get the ultrasound or the CT scan for something that's been going on for months. Those are reserved in the emergency room for people who are currently in the last couple of hours, pretty much in excruciating pain, that need the scan now. So it's going to save you a lot of time to, try to see your family doctor or your urgent care clinic for any of those things. Okay. But yeah, the basic thought process is you see the triage nurse, you get triaged. After triaging, then you go to registration. So there's step 1, go see the triage nurse. Step 2, go to registration. So who are these registration folks? Don't ask them any medical questions because their job is to register you in the system. That's it, okay? They might be asking you some medical questions, like, have you been in a hospital in the last 2 weeks? Have you been out of the country? They're gonna ask you all these questions to put it on your file. One of the most important things is to let your nurse or the registration clerk know if your injury occurred at work, okay? Because that's a whole separate process. If your injury occurred at work and you're coming to the emergency department or even your family doctor, but if it occurred at work, let us know. Because we do things to try to protect you from this injury. What does this mean? If someone is there because of a work injury, we have a separate form we get you to fill. And this way it's proof that you came here for a work injury. And then God forbid something happens, or let's say, I don't know, you twist an ankle at work and your ankle is completely busted and you're not able to work for months or something like that. That form that we fill out at the first visit is your golden ticket to prove that this happened at work and you went to see a doctor right away, and like that's it's to protect you. Okay, so the registration clerk, we're at step 2, will ask you that. Yes, go ahead, Heidi.
So this just makes me ask, like, if it's not very severe, but here you are advising him to go in order to prove his right, because it happened at work.
No, but you don't have to go right away. So for example, if this happened at work, you can still go to your family doctor. They're going to fill out the same form as us. But I'm talking about someone who at work fell down the stairs and can't walk anymore, right? So if you can't walk anymore and you fell down the stairs, I don't think you can wait 2, 3 days, 4 days, 1 week to go see your family doctor. If you feel like your ankle might be broken, you're unable to walk on it, that qualifies as an emergency visit to get you an ankle x-ray. Because if it's broken, we can't wait on it. We're going to have to put you in a cast, put you in what's called an air boot, which is those astronaut boots we put people in. So keep that in mind, that like emergencies are not only can't breathe, chest pain and abdominal pain. If you feel like there's something broken, then sure. But if I bang my wrist against something and it hurts a little bit, but I can move it, the likelihood is it's not broken. I know you're going to tell me, yeah, but doc, I'm not a doctor. How do I know it's not broken, right? But use your personal judgment. If the pain is severe, and despite putting ice, taking Advil, taking Tylenol, these are things you can do before deciding to come in. If the pain is still severe, or you see that, hey, obviously the bone is like coming like, in a weird shape, then that means you need to go to the emergency department. Okay. Urgent care clinics also deal with these things. So it's not just emergency rooms. Urgent care clinics can deal with breaks, because very many of the urgent care clinics have x-ray capabilities. And if they don't, they'll send you to an x-ray department next door, usually, that does the x-ray, and then you come back and see. So just keep that in mind, that emergency rooms should be left for severe emergencies. Okay. But we welcome you to come if you're not sure. Okay. This is not to say that we're shut out. If you're not sure if this is an emergency, please, we are happy to see you. The only thing is, be patient with us, especially in December and January of every year, not just COVID, and during the holidays of every year, not just COVID. And now compounded with COVID, you will be waiting an extremely long time. And that is unfortunately the norm right now.
Okay, I am here representing the newcomers.
Sure.
So I am going to ask a very simple question that I don't know, how can I differentiate between urgent care clinic and emergency department? How can I tell which one? I am new to the city.
No problem. So an emergency department is usually labeled emergency department. It's usually in a hospital. Okay. Urgent care clinic is not emergencies. It's one level down. So if I twist my ankle, but I'm still able to walk, okay, and I'm still able to walk on it, it's painful, but not too painful, then that for me is an urgent care clinic department, right? But if I don't know where I'm going, and I know that, hey, what I'm feeling right now is an emergency, then you can Google your nearest hospital, and every hospital has an emergency department. Hospitals don't usually have an urgent care clinic department. Usually they're set up, separately. They might be in malls, they might be, in random parts in the city. But urgent care, URGENT, urgent care is usually a walk-in clinic. So if you Google like walk-in clinic, you'll be able to find that as well. But emergency departments are usually in hospitals.
So one clear sign is, if it's a hospital, this is emergency. It's a big thing. It's a hospital. So this is when it's very severe for me. Otherwise, I look for the smaller clinics. So, and it's usually more in the neighborhoods.
Yeah, exactly. Every neighborhood almost has an urgent care clinic or a walk-in clinic. One thing you can do, if you're really not sure, is called telehealth. So telehealth will be able to kind of direct you where. I'll be honest, very often telehealth says go to the emergency department, because they sometimes can't differentiate, but at least you've tried. You've spoken to telehealth, you've decided, let's just find you the number for telehealth, okay? So telehealth in Ontario, it's usually a 24-hour line. And if you Google Telehealth Ontario, you'll get the number for them, okay? I have it here as 1-866-797 and then 0000, but just Google Telehealth Ontario and you should be able to get it, okay? So that's just that's another thing that you can, if you're not sure, telehealth, usually it's a nurse that answers the call, and it's a toll-free number, and you can call from all over Ontario. So that's one way for you if you're really not sure. Now, if you're having severe chest pain and it's 10 on 10 and you really, you're sweating, you're not feeling well, and you've got risk factors for, let's say, a heart attack or whatnot, like you're a smoker or whatnot, then, you can call 911 even. So you've got another option. If something is very, very severe, you cannot get to the hospital yourself, then you can call 911. Okay. And then the ambulance will come, pick you up, assess you, and take you to the nearest hospital. When the ambulance comes, you unfortunately, you cannot say, I want to go to this hospital. They will take you to the nearest hospital. Actually, not even the nearest hospital. They will take you to the hospital that is in the jurisdiction you're in. So for example, if you live in North York, but like the northernest part of North York, and your nearest hospital is actually a hospital that is not in North York, but it's in the border of something else, but because they picked you up in North York, you have to go to North York General. Okay, so
just for clarification, the doctor lives in Toronto. Most of our audience is in Ottawa, but it's the same idea that it's the area.
Yeah,
like where people
you know what, I lived in Ottawa as well. So if you live, for example, if you have an emergency and you call 911 and you're in the Alta Vista area, then you're going to go to the general. Okay, but if you have an emergency and you're on the other side, you're going to go to the Civic, for example. But if you are in the west side of Ottawa, all the way in the west side, and you call 911 and you tell them, no, I want to go to the Civic, they're going to take you to the Queensway Carleton, okay, which is an amazing hospital as well. But I'm just trying to say is that, like, it depends on where you call 911. So you unfortunately cannot decide where you want to go. It's all already set out.
Thank you. Could you also shed a little bit more light of how can I evaluate the pain? Because some people also think that the level of pain is different from one person to another, and sometimes it's also different from one race to another.
I see that I see that a lot where people just cannot quantify their pain, but people just don't feel like they can quantify their pain. So don't forget, when we say how bad is your pain out of 10, we're asking for your pain. So it's how you feel. But if you're sitting there talking to me and you're on your phone earlier and you tell me your pain is 10 on 10, that's hard to believe. 10 on 10 is getting hit by a bus and having one of your limbs cut off. Like, that's 10 on 10 pain, where it's so severe you can barely breathe and barely talk. Okay, 0 on 10 pain is you're pain-free, it's all done. Okay, everything in between, it's all up to you. Okay, but between 8 and 10 on 10 pain is the worst pain you've ever felt in your entire life. Imagine getting hit by a bus and still being alive. That is the type of pain we mean. So that's the visual I give people, is like 10 on 10 is very, very serious pain, like a very bad accident. And then 0 on 10 pain is, you sitting down and just watching TV and you're not even noticing the pain.
Okay, what could be the consequence if I intentionally lie in giving the doctor the real pain?
Yeah,
pain level that I have? Maybe I think if I tell you it's 10, you will give me more attention.
The thing is, though, most of the people don't intentionally lie. I really hope you guys don't intentionally lie, but let's say someone does, we can tell. We can tell who is 10 on 10 pain and who is not 10 on 10 pain. And if it's 10 on 10 pain and, you look comfortable, or it's still 10 on 10 pain, despite the pain medications we give, it's, you know, like we can tell. We've been trained to be able to tell who's in pain, who's in not. We have tricks to, when we're examining you, tricks on how to find out how bad the pain is. Because unfortunately, we do have people coming to the emergency department who want drugs, who want morphine. And so they come and they tell us, we're in 10 on 10 pain, please, the only thing that works for me is morphine. So, you know, like we have to be careful. You know, some people have legitimate medical problems that require the morphine. And we have your medical files most of the time. We're able to see what happened in the past, what kind of, who gave you what in the past. We can tell like how many times did you go to the pharmacy and that kind of thing. So, so that's just something to keep in mind. Like there's no consequences, you know, no one's going to jail for lying, but it's
no,
more...
I'm thinking of like, if I am not used to drugs, but like I am so afraid of pain and I give you like much higher than what I really feel, that you will give me more like of painkillers,
I mean,
that maybe more drugs, which my body may not really be able to bear because like I'm not used to it.
Yeah, that's also a good point, is that if you're telling me 10 on 10 pain and I give you lots of medications, and then, you know, you get bad side effects from the medications because your pain is not that high, right? So keep that in mind. Like I had a colleague who actually had surgery, and they gave her 2 milligrams of hydromorphone IV. And in fact, she stopped breathing for a few seconds because of the hydromorphone. But because her pain was, you know, like nobody asked her how bad your pain was. And they gave her the medication after a surgery thinking that, you know, like it'll help. But in fact, she stopped breathing for a few seconds, and they had to stop the hydromorphone. So please just tell us the truth. Tell us what you're feeling. We're there to help you. You're there. We're there. We want to do our best to make you healthy. And the only way we can do that is by you giving us clues about your body. The only one who will have these clues is yourself. So if you give us as many clues as possible, this would help. And another thing I wanted to mention is you will hear the same question being asked to you many, many times. Please don't get frustrated. We have to do that. We have to ask you who you are, what your birthday is, even if you have a wristband. We've had too many in the past. Before we used to do this, we had mix-ups, and that is, you know, dangerous. So we ask you the same questions again and again. We ask you your allergies maybe 3 or 4 times before you leave. And that is because we want to avoid these mistakes. Okay.
So we also need to realize that like these drugs are not really something good for our body. We just take it when we have to.
When you absolutely have to. Yeah. You shouldn't be taking medications unless you need it. Now, Tylenol and Advil over the counter, people misunderstand it, or what's the word? They don't utilize it properly, I find. So a regularly sized adult who has no contraindications or allergies to Tylenol or Advil should be taking, if they have, let's say, a headache or something, 1 gram of Tylenol every 6 hours if needed. Okay. And again, if there's no contraindications and there's no allergies, you can take Advil 400 milligrams every 6 hours. You can even take them at the same time. They act very differently, so you don't need to like spread them out or anything. They act differently and can be taken at the same time. And in fact, in the emergency department, we give it at the same time. Now, just keep in mind, do ask your family doctor if you're allowed to take Advil. There are lots of people out there that are not allowed to take Advil. They're not allowed to take non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which is what the class that Advil is under, like Aleve, Advil, naproxen, which is Aleve just at a higher dose. These are medications that are very hard on your stomach. And some people, if they take it too often, they might get ulcers. And keep in mind, even Tylenol has a limit. Don't take more than 3 grams a day. The truth is 4 grams a day, but I tell people 3 grams a day. So that's 6 pills a day. Don't take more than 6 pills a day. So 2 pills every 6 hours, maximum of 3 grams a day. That is all written in the fine print on the bottle. Okay. It's nothing that I'm like, you know, that is new that I'm kind of like preaching. It's all written in the fine print on the bottle.
And some people have allergies from this kind of like painkillers. So what could be other options?
So it depends what their pain is from. if they, bump their elbow and their elbow hurts, first thing I would do is I would put ice on it, and then I would rest it. I would keep it elevated. Let's say you're watching TV, I'd keep it elevated. You can get a elbow brace from the pharmacy, or you can, if you're allergic to Advil, you can take Tylenol. So those are things that you can try by the time you go see your family doctor or the urgent care clinic.
What about if I think I have COVID, but like I don't want to go to the hospital, I think I'm not that serious, but I'm still in pain? What can I do?
I would say you're absolutely right. You shouldn't go to the hospital if you feel okay, you're breathing okay, you don't have chest pain, but you think you have COVID. What you do is you, again, go to your friend Google and you look for your nearest COVID assessment center, okay? And that's where you're gonna get your PCR test, where they'll test you and make sure if you have COVID or not. Okay, so the PCR test will tell you definitively if you have COVID or not, hopefully, and it has a good sensitivity, meaning it captures people more accurately than other tests. And when I say other tests, I mean I actually brought it with me. So I have here the COVID antigen testing. So they're I've got a swab antigen testing. I'm actually going to test myself before going to my shift. So these, you can actually buy them online and stuff. They're rapid testing devices here. You probably heard about them a lot on the news, and people are thinking that, hey, I'm going to still have my Christmas party. I'll just test everyone. No, these are not very accurate, okay? They truly are not as accurate as the tests that you go physically to a COVID assessment center and you get the PCR test that is usually up the nose, sometimes in the mouth, but usually up the nose. And those are more accurate. Please don't think that if you're gonna do one of these rapid assessment tests, that's gonna be enough for you to have a Christmas party. What they're saying nowadays is in a big city, if you're gonna be in a gathering, there's more than a 10 to 12% chance that someone in this gathering has COVID. So that's too high of a chance for me. I had multiple dinner parties actually that are planned for the next week. All of them have been canceled. It sucks. We've been through this for 2 years. It sucks for everyone. It sucks especially for the medical community, because this is now going to be my first week off in I think 2 years. But I canceled all plans because it's not worth it. It's not worth it. You've heard that Omicron is not as severe, and I agree it's not as severe, but you know what? You might be the person where it is severe for. We are seeing more hospitalizations. We are seeing people hospitalized because it's all relative. If the virus is fast spreading, which is Omicron, is very fast spreading, the virus is very, very fast spreading, then more people are going to get it. So then we're actually going to have more people that are very sick. Okay, so it's just not worth it in the end. I hate the fact that we have to cancel all these gatherings, but it's best for our health and our family's health.
And also I don't know about Toronto, but in Ottawa we are running out of PCR tests now.
In Toronto, we're having we're basically being fully booked for the PCR tests for a few days. They're opening more testing centers, from what I'm hearing. But I would just say stay put. If you can get your hands on the rapid test, great. But just keep in mind, it's not a green card to have a gathering. Okay, it's not okay, I'm negative, I can have a gathering, because I've heard this many times where people, they do the rapid test, it's negative, they go, they chill with their friends, and then all of a sudden they all have COVID.
It can be false negative or false positive.
Exactly, it can be both, and the scary part is the false negative.
Yes, Sarah? Go ahead.
So just along the lines of COVID and how things have changed, we have a question in the Q&A box, and it reads, how has COVID affected you in the emergency department? What's changed for you in the present state of the pandemic compared to pre-COVID times?
So thanks for that question. That's a great question. So I'll talk to you about pre-COVID times. So pre-COVID times, we would have busy emergency departments we wouldn't be wearing masks, right? Because nobody's wearing masks pre-COVID times. But the only times we would be wearing masks and a gown and a face shield is when we have someone, for example, who's coming in and they have signs and symptoms of pneumonia. And so, you know, that you don't want them to infect you, right? But nowadays, when anyone can have COVID, really, and be asymptomatic, even if they're coming for their ankle sprain, then we are actually recently been asked by the hospital to wear an N95 mask all the time. This is, for the last 2 years, we have not been asked to wear an N95 mask all the time, but now things have changed. Omicron is extremely fast spreading, and it's fast spreading even in asymptomatic people. And, you know, I'm clearly seeing in the hospital people who are coming in with like severe COVID, they're not vaccinated. It's very clear to me, like those who come in, those who come in that are severely sick have not been vaccinated. So just keep in mind that that's your best protection. It always has been. So even if you do get Omicron while you're vaccinated, you know, I'm okay with getting the sniffles. That's okay with me. I can get a small cold, and if it's called COVID, great, that's fine. But the reason my risk is lower is because I'm vaccinated. And right now, booster vaccines are open for everybody above the age of 18, right? In Ontario. So keep that in mind too. And also keep in mind that just because we call it booster, but in reality, it's the same vaccine. It's exactly the same vaccine. It's just a third dose. All right. And people ask me like, oh, is there going to be a 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th dose? Time will tell. We don't know yet. But there are studies, and don't quote me on this because it's just preliminary studies, that are showing that this possibly could be a 3-dose vaccine, meaning that hopefully after 3 doses, you're protected. But again, this is not hard science yet. That's what's great about science, is that we keep trying to seek the truth. We keep trying to study something and learn more about it. Okay. So right now we know for a fact that your best bet against COVID, whether it's Delta or Omicron, is getting vaccinated. And then there keeps, you know, we continuously study these vaccines in order to understand, not these vaccines, but the population. The vaccines have been studied exhaustively. One of the best studies out there was actually the COVID vaccines. One of the best studies we've ever read was the COVID vaccines. So just keep in mind that we continuously monitor the population and monitor how our antibody levels, so the little, you know, like soldiers that our bodies create to fight COVID, how it progresses with time, right? So your best bet is to get vaccinated. If you're worried that you might have COVID, please get a COVID test. Okay. If you can't get booked for whatever reason, try to get a rapid antigen test. Sometimes they're sold online. And then lastly, please wear a mask everywhere you go. If you can get an N95 mask, and I know they're being sold made in Canada nowadays online, and I know there's a lot that are sold out, but if you can, do that. I personally bought N95 masks from online for my family in case they need to go to the grocery store. I'm telling them not to wear just a regular face covering and to try to wear an N95 mask, simply because of how spread the Omicron is. Now, sorry, I don't think I completely answered your question, but basically before COVID, we haven't been wearing masks. The emergency department was busy, but manageable. Nowadays, we have to wear the masks all the time, and not just masks, the N95 mask all the time, gown up all the time. We're extremely vigilant. We cannot no longer, normally we don't have time to eat in an emergency shift or drink water, okay? Or go to the washroom. That is the truth. We never had time for that. So sometimes people used to, you know, bring their snacks in their pocket and eat something while walking to the next patient. But nowadays we can't really remove our masks. So we're not even having time to eat at all, even if it's having a snack in your pocket, because removing your mask and eating, that might spread COVID. So a lot of restrictions all throughout, and we just want this to be over, just like you guys. And hopefully the more people get vaccinated, because unfortunately what happened is that the Omicron came out of unvaccinated people. So in developing countries, like we know that it came out of South Africa. Unfortunately, you know, vaccine equality, right? Like they don't have vaccines the way we have vaccines. So there's lots of people who really want the vaccines in South Africa, but couldn't get them. And so the Omicron came out of unvaccinated people, just spreading between unvaccinated people, and then came to us. And now it's spreading between unvaccinated people and some unvaccinated and some vaccinated people. But the vaccinated people, I so far have not seen one because I know they're staying home and I know they're not that sick so far.
So you're saying that like people who got vaccinated, they don't really go to the hospital, even if there are some cases, but they don't get that sick. So they never really go to the hospital or the ICU because the vaccine still works even with Omicron.
Yeah, the vaccine still works even with Omicron. And I wanna like stress the fact that, let's say in the next few days, you hear of a case that was vaccinated and went to the ICU. Let's say you hear that. Dr. Khatib lied to us. No, that is not true. In a population where there's 35 million people, where we are vaccinating 85% of us, and we have this very, very serious illness that is going really spreading fast, you might still have people going to the ICU who have, you might still, I haven't heard of it yet, but it might happen. But our life is all about risks and benefit. Why do you wear your seatbelt? You wear your seatbelt because it will reduce your risk of dying in a car accident. You get your vaccine so that it reduces your risk of dying from COVID. Not from just getting COVID, because you might still get it. But I have a colleague who got COVID and she was exposed unmasked. She got COVID. She is vaccinated, but she's at home, you know, video chatting with us every day, feeling fine. And she knows that she has diabetes. She knows that if she was not vaccinated, she probably would have ended up in the hospital, especially with her risk factors.
Yes, and now we are hearing also about the long COVID and how it stays with some people like for months and almost a year. Some people still continue to suffer. It's not just like a 2 weeks thing that I can bear. And so, have you seen any people like?
Yeah, I've actually seen people who are coming for something completely different, and they just tell me like, sorry about my cough, I have long COVID. And I'm just like, I feel so badly for them because they still have, since March 2020, they're still having symptoms. Some people never regained their taste of smell. Some people, they got COVID before vaccines. They wish that they, you know, had the chance to get vaccinated, but they got COVID before vaccines existed, and they still have lung problems. Some people needed lung transplants. Like, this is sad because it's even young people who were healthy that got this, and long COVID just means COVID symptoms that just stay with you sometimes forever. The other day I was reading on the news, a young girl, I think she was like 7, she's lost about half her hair. Like, she's pulling up her hair, half of it was lost. And that since she got COVID, her body just was overwhelmed with the fight against COVID, and she still has not regained her hair back. So this virus is doing odd things, especially to like our immunity. And we're not seeing, like, getting the vaccine will protect you from COVID and likely from long COVID, given the fact that it's not giving you severe symptoms. The severe symptoms that you get with COVID will get you long COVID. So just keep that in mind, that long COVID is not fun. There are clinics opening up called long COVID clinics. So when you know that, when that's opening up, you know that this is serious, and like there's enough people to open a clinic to take care of them. So you don't want COVID, even if we say that Omicron is not as severe. You know, like actually a study came in the UK that shows there's no evidence that it's less severe. But from what we're seeing anecdotally is it seems less severe, but you never know. The UK is ahead of us a few weeks and ahead of us. So maybe in a few weeks, we will be telling you the same thing, that it's just as severe.
But we know that it spreads much faster.
That is a fact. And it's a fact that you can see with the numbers. You know, going from 1,500 to all of a sudden 4,000 in just like a few like short days, like 2-3 short days. Like this is definitely a faster spreading virus, and so more people will get sick. The emergencies will be full, and I just want you to try to avoid a hospital as best you can. So stay safe, don't go out, and stay within your circle, within your family circle. Sarah?
Yeah, sorry, we just have a question in the Q&A.
Sure.
So they're asking, do you think COVID will end even with the small minority of people who do not want to get vaccinated, so those who are heavily against it? So basically, do you see an end to COVID even with those who refuse to get vaccinated?
I'm generally an optimistic person and I like to manifest things. So I'm going to say yes, one day COVID will end. The only problem I see right now is the fact that is vaccine equity, meaning that we have countries out there, developing countries, that do not have access to the vaccine. And if we are not all vaccinated, if we are not all safe, none of us are safe.
So you are talking here about the world. All is humanity, not all in Canada, right?
Say that again, sorry.
Like when you say we all, you are referring to humanity, to all people all over the world, not just in Canada.
What I mean is vaccine equity, meaning trying to get vaccines to poorer countries. Because, you know, even if we take a handle of this here, if we are still allowing flights from elsewhere, then we will see COVID again, and we will see variants again. So especially if like we're having high unvaccinated rates elsewhere, mainly because they don't have access to them. They'd love to get vaccinated. They just did not have access to the vaccine. So we, you know, I'm hoping that we can start, you know, like I know that Canada's donated some vaccines, and I'm hoping that we can put an effort to do that, especially after, like, you know, we're getting our boosters. So, and, you know, in terms of travel and you know, like the government is closely monitoring that. I'm hoping that some kind of halt is going to happen soon, so that we can kind of contain this. But it's about the unvaccinated here, but it's also about the unvaccinated everywhere.
Doctor, could you explain a little bit? I don't think everyone understands the relation between not being vaccinated and the variants appearing.
Yeah, no problem.
What's the connection?
So when a virus, in order to, you may have heard Prime Minister Justin Trudeau say the other day, let's starve the virus, right? Did you hear that word, starve the virus? For me, I mean, I got it and I thought it was amusing, but I was thinking to myself, like, I wonder if people understand what that means. So in order for a virus to live, it needs a vector. It needs some body to live in. So a virus will not live unless there's something it can jump onto and take over. Okay, so COVID can't just like live in the air and be itself. A virus needs a vector. It needs a person to hang on to. So to starve the virus, it means to kind of stay indoors and try not to let it spread. The more the virus spreads from person to person, the more, as a virus spreads, it mutates a little bit. So when it mutates to something, as it spreads from unvaccinated to unvaccinated to unvaccinated, and then let's say it catches a vaccinated person, but unvaccinated, it will change its genetics and sometimes become weaker, sometimes become stronger, sometimes become faster spreading. And that's what we're seeing with the Omicron, the faster spreading. Okay, so a virus is always mutating by nature. It's always mutating. And as the more it spreads, the more it can mutate. And so to starve the virus, we need to kind of not let it have that opportunity to mutate by not letting it spread.
So when we have more people vaccinated, the virus will not find people to like live
It'll be harder for the virus. So for example, let's say someone is triple vaccinated and the virus tries to, like, they're exposed to COVID. Their chance of getting COVID is, let's say, don't quote me on these numbers because they haven't been studied yet, but let's say around 30%, okay? So they're protecting themselves over 70%, okay? So then the virus will less likely move on, right? That body was able to fight it, take care of it. It did not completely overwhelm me, right? So then if we're vaccinated, then it's less likely to go around, but it can still move around between the unvaccinated groups. And as you know, people who are unvaccinated probably are hanging out with other people who are unvaccinated. So then you've got super spreader events where where the virus will definitely mutate. But I want you to realize that, you know, not every mutation in the virus is a mutation that is concerning. You know, we've heard of Delta, we've heard of before Delta, but between Delta and Omicron, D, the letter D to the letter O, those we didn't really hear about because they were not variants of concern.
Yeah, and what makes COVID-19 different from other viruses like SARS, for example? Like some parts of the world suffered from it, but like it didn't take that long to conquer it. Any?
I think number one, travel is more. Number two, the virus itself is faster spreading. And we do have evidence that the virus is actually airborne, not just droplet. So what does that mean? So if I'm wearing a mask and you're wearing a mask and we're in the same room, yes, if I'm speaking, then the droplets that come out are being blocked by the mask. But COVID actually is in the air, not just in the droplets. So that's why an N95 is highly encouraged because it filters these particles, these tiny particles of COVID that will be in the air. So that's why I encourage you guys to get the N95s. It's more of a protection for you. So the difference between previous viruses is this one is faster spreading. This one is giving us more severe illnesses. And it's really the fast spread mainly. And the fact that the severe illnesses are happening. Those are the two things that make a virus so powerful.
We do have a question in the Q&A. How is emergency mental health faring during the pandemic?
That's an excellent question. I would say it's pretty similar from my anecdotal perspective. It's pretty similar to before the pandemic. It's, if someone has, mental illness that is related to paranoia or whatnot, or OCD, then we see it more during the pandemic because it's related to, germs and viruses and you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. But in terms of mental health, I mean, honestly, I think we're all suffering from mental health issues related to this terrible 2 years that we've been through collectively as a human race. I've noticed that it's quite still similar to before the pandemic. Personally, I've noticed that. The problem is we have less resources. So that's why it might be looking like it's worse. Example, we've got a huge nursing shortage, huge mental health nurse shortage. And people always ask me, oh, is it because they don't want to get vaccinated? No, they do want to get vaccinated. They've gotten vaccinated. Nurses are highly educated. They are smart. They believe in science. They are vaccinated, okay? The reason nurses are quitting is because they are tired of being poorly treated. And the last 2 years has just taken a toll on everyone. And so we've got nurses quitting, changing careers. So there's a huge shortage, okay? So mental health has suffered because the waiting times for mental health is worse now. And also in general in the emerge, there's a huge shortage of nurses. I see another question. What does triage mean? So I will explain it. I'll also see if I can find the Arabic word. Is triage in Arabic? Because the thing is, though, I couldn't find one. It doesn't, like the one I find on Google Translate doesn't make sense, but I'll explain it. So triage basically is trying to figure out the priority level. So if I have, imagine these three people. I have a 69-year-old man with chest pain and trouble breathing. I have a 10-year-old boy who twisted their ankle, and I have a 14-year-old girl with abdominal pain, but she's sitting and she's on her phone and she looks comfortable. Okay. So my triaging will be number one for the guy with chest pain. He needs to be seen first or more urgently. Likely number two in the girl with the abdominal pain. And number three for the gentleman who the young guy who twisted his ankle but is able to walk. So triage means priority levels. And the triage room or the triage nurse is the first person you see when you go to the emergency department. Okay, you see that person, they ask you a bunch of questions to find out why you're here, and then they find out who is the priority. Is it going to be you, or the person having a heart attack next door, or bleeding next door, or having a broken leg next door, or yourself. So it's also part of a computer system that checks what your vital signs are. It's not just what you say, it's also your vital signs. If a patient comes in and says, I feel like my heart is racing really, really, really fast and I can't breathe, and their vital signs show that their rate of respiration is normal, their heart rate is low, and their blood pressure is normal, then in fact, their triage level is different, okay? So that's what triage in general means.
And for COVID and like all the what's happening with COVID, and maybe sometimes some people, like after they get the vaccine, they also think I need to go to the hospital because like some of the side effects are severe. So could you give us a little bit of guidance when I need to go?
No problem. So basically, after you get the vaccine, the first one, most of the time people don't feel anything, okay? The second one, and I'm talking about all the different vaccines that are available in Canada, not specific ones. So for the second dose you get, you might feel some fevers, you might feel some chills, you might feel tired, unwell. That should last about a day and a half. After that, you're fine. I felt all of those things in my second one. I felt really, feeling fatigue, headache, not well, and I had a fever as well, but I knew that it was going to be short. Why? Because this is your immune system working. When your immune system is building antibodies through the vaccine, because it's learning from the vaccine, the only thing, the vaccine doesn't have COVID. The vaccine does not have COVID. What the vaccine has is a map for the COVID protein. So it's giving your body a map. It's saying, here you go, body, learn this map. Then your own body is creating antibodies to fight COVID. When your body does that, it takes a lot from you. It takes energy from you. It's normal. When you're sick with something, anything, if you're sick with a cold 10 years ago, then your body is feeling rough because it is learning to make the antibodies to fight whatever virus you had. So same thing with the vaccine. It doesn't have COVID. You don't have COVID if you had the vaccine. Even if you get a PCR test, you won't test positive. It's not COVID. It's just your body making antibodies. And that's normal. All right. With the third dose, same thing. Some of my friends felt nothing. They felt perfectly fine. Some people like myself, same thing happened to me. Fever, chills, feeling unwell for a day and a half. After that, I was perfectly fine.
And why do we expect that the third dose will fight Omicron, but the first two wouldn't be able to do so?
It's not about the dose themselves. It's not about the vaccine itself. It's just the fact that if you've had your second dose like 6 months ago, then your antibody level with time kind of goes down. Okay. And then once you get your third booster, it goes all the way back up. So you're able to fight it more often. You're able to fight it better.
We really like to thank you for your time and your insights, and really it was a pleasure to have you here, and we will make this available online. The recording will be available and more people can watch it later. Thank you so much, Dr.
Perfect. Thank you all. Take care, stay safe, happy holidays, and do your best to protect yourselves.